What's up, fight fans? Welcome to Triple THS, brought to you by Kountermove Fantasy MMA at Kountermove.com. I'm the Nicolas Cage Superman movie and mixed martial arts, Tommy Toho. Today, my UFC 183 Kountermove picks. Let's do this shit! This is it, fight fans. The greatest fight of all time is finally upon us. I honestly can't even fucking picture that round one bell ringing and fucking Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva walking towards each other. It is the superest fucking super fight that's ever happened, that's ever gonna happen. And holy shit, if you're not witnessing it, then you clearly do not give a shit about MMA, because it does not and will not get any better than this. I don't give a shit if the rest of the card was Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg playing with action figures and commentating it. This pay-per-view would be worth it 100 times over just for the main event. Of course, the UFC has decided to bless us with a kick-ass card on top of the main event, but I have got something that's gonna make this all 100 million times more amazing. I'm talking about cash prizes. I'm talking about the level of excitement getting cranked up to 11. I'm talking about playing Kountermove Fantasy MMA at Kountermove.com. How much are we talking about in prizes? I'm talking about a $25,000 tourney with the winner getting $4 grand. I'm talking about the most fun you've ever had watching a fight, because this is fucking Silva versus Diaz, but now you and your friends have something at stake too. If you've never tried Fantasy MMA at Kountermove.com, you've never really watched a UFC card. I know you've seen me talk about this 1,000 times. Fight fans, finally fucking listen to me on this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm gonna show you how to play. I'm gonna go through every single fight on the card, and then at the end of this video, you're gonna sign the fuck up, because you're gonna say, holy shit, Tommy, that is exactly as fucking awesome as you said it would be. All right, let's break this shit down. The first thing you have to do is head to the website. It's Kountermove.com. Once you're there, you'll be greeted by professional hot person, surfer, yogi, Jedi, and distance running master, Natasha Wicks. Once you've said hello, take a look below, and you'll see all sorts of different fantasy MMA games. Some are big, some are small, some are free, but all of them are pure fucking fun. And if none of these games strike your fancy, head to the bottom of the page and make your own game. If you want it, we got it. The game I want to play, though, is the big one, the monster, the $25,000 Tommy Toho Let's Do This Shit UFC 183 tourney. 25 bucks gets you in. The top spot pays out $4 fucking grand. Everybody from 1st to 196th are getting a piece of the pie. Once you've chosen your game, you'll be brought to the team selection screen. This is where the scientists clone dinosaurs using 65 million-year-old mosquitoes. You've got $25,000 for $10 to draft 5 fighters that will be competing at UFC 183. Your fighters will score points based on their performance in the cage. The team with the most points at the end of the night is the winner. Sounds a lot like fantasy football, you know why? Because it's just like fucking fantasy football. The better your fighter does, the more points your fighter gets. That means finishes in the first round are about as good as it's gonna get. And with that in mind, let's take a look at Saturday night's matchups to decide who it is that needs to be on your team. All right, first up, we've got Ed Herman taking on Derek Brunson. Herman has 22 wins, 13 via submission with an 82% finish rate. He's lost 6 times via sub in his career. At 34, he's been fighting since 2003. That's a lot of miles. He's been hit and miss since his return to the UFC, with all 3 fights going to a decision. Brunson has 12 wins with a 66% finish rate. He's been KO'd twice in his career. He is far less experienced than Herman. He is 3-1 in the UFC with a single submission win in the first over Brian Houston. I think Brunson wins this one, but Herman is hard to stop. I think it's a competitive fight, and I'm avoiding either guy on my Kountermove team. Next, we've got Thiago Santos and Andy Enns. Santos has 9 wins, most via KO. He's got a 66% finish rate. He lost his last fight via decision to Uriah Hall. The fight before that, he destroyed Hani Marks quick in the first. He's had several first-round finishes, but mostly against lower-tier guys. Enns is only 23 years old. He's got 7 wins with 5 subs and a 71% finish rate. His 2 UFC fights have been losses, both via decision. He is coming straight out of Alaska, and he's got a pretty solid ground game. Santos likely wins here. Enns has never been finished, but I can see Thiago being able to pull it out, possibly for a big win. I don't think Santos has shown enough at the elite level to risk the bank, but it is something to think about. Next, we have Ian McCall taking on John Lineker. McCall has 13 wins with a 54% finish rate. He has fought very high-level guys his entire career. He took Mighty Mouse to a draw. His last 5 fights have been decisions. Lineker has 24 wins with 12 KO stops. He has a 63% finish rate. He has more fights than McCall, but not as much at the highest level. He has 4 stops in the UFC, 1 in the first round. If Lineker is going to get the stop, it's most likely going to be via KO TKO. The problem with that is Uncle Creepy has never been put to sleep. He's too fast. He has too much high-level experience. McCall wins this one, possibly dominantly, but I do think it goes to a decision. Definitely not my first pick in a Kountermove game, especially at 5,300. Next, we have Jimmy Hedges taking on Diego Brandao. Hedges has 11 wins, 10 via sub at a 91% finish rate. He's lost twice. One of those a decision. The other time his lights got turned off. That was in his last fight against Dennis Bermudez. He has 2 sub wins in the UFC, one over Bruce Leroy, another over Robert Whiteford. A very strong ground game, but most of his finishes come in his career before the UFC. Brandao is 18-10. He's got 50% of his wins via KO, TKO, and a 78% finish rate. He's been KO'd 6 times in his career, but he's only been subbed once. He's dropped 2 straight in the UFC, both via KO in the first round. He's fought some really high-level dudes. Hedis is pretty legit. I think he's better than the 4,500 indicates. The problem is, if he wins via stop, it's probably going to be a sub, and Brandao is not going to be subbed so easily. He's a high-level black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think Brandao bounces back and wins here. I think he's going to be looking to win big and impressively. I think he gets an early stop via TKO. Next, we've got Idomar Alcantara taking on Richardson Moreta. Alcantara has 20 wins, 10 via KO. He has an 80% finish rate. He has lost 5 times via decision. Had a very impressive debut sub over Wagner Prado, but since then has been hot and cold in the UFC with 4 decisions, 2 of which he lost. Moreta is 7-2 with 5 sub wins. He has a 100% finish rate, but not a lot of fights and against high-level guys. But not a lot of fights and not against a lot of high-level guys. He lost his last fight via KO in the first, which was his UFC debut. Alcantara has the experience, the high-level competition, and he has shown that he can finish people. I think he is a solid pick, but Moreta could be a steal at 4,400 if you think he can pull off the upset with his 100% finish rate. Next up, we've got Tim Bosch taking on Thales Ladies. Bosch has been in the UFC for the last 5 years. He fought briefly before that in the UFC in 08 and 09. He's got 18 wins, most via KO, TKO, with a 72% finish rate. He's lost 3 of his last 5, but one of those was to Luke Rockhold. He finished Brad Tavares in his last fight in the second round. He's fought the highest level competition in the division. He's fought tons of high level guys. Latest has 24 wins with 13 subs. His first stint in the UFC was from 07 to 09. He has fought Anderson Silva and a lot of other elite talent. He's been back in the UFC since 2013, going unbeaten in 4 fights, 2 of which were stops via KO. Another tough matchup here, 2 vets of the sport. Latest has looked more impressive as of late and has a lot of weapons. Bosch is hard to put away, but has been stopped before. I think this fight goes long. I think Latest wins, but not right away. I'm gonna go ahead and avoid this one. Next, we've got Rafael Natal taking on Tom Watson. Natal has 18 wins, 61% via finish. He has 8 submission wins in his career, but 0 first-round finishes in the UFC. He's lost 2 of his last 3, and his last win was a split decision. He hasn't had a finish since 2013 and only once in the UFC altogether. Watson is a longtime cage rage guy. He's been in the UFC since 2012. He's 17-7 with a 53% finish rate. 8 of those stops were KOs. He's 2-3 in the UFC with 1 TKO finish against Stanislav Nedkov. He beat a very tough Sam Alvey in his last fight. This is a pretty evenly matched fight as told by the 4,800 for both fighters, but Natal has not had much luck finishing in the UFC, and while Watson hasn't either, he has a bunch of KO finishes, something Natal has been susceptible to in the past. I'm gonna go with Watson on this one to get the finish. Next, we've got Miesha Tate taking on Sarah McMahon. Tate has fought everybody there is to fight. In 15 wins, she has a 60% finish rate, mostly via submission. She's lost 5 times with an 80% finish rate. She has fought at the very top of the division for a pretty long time now. She bounced back from that second loss to Ronda by beating Liz Carmouche, then had kind of a weird win against Rin Nakai in her UFC debut. McMahon is an Olympic wrestler. She is 8-1 in her career. Her only loss is to Ronda. She has a 50% finish rate, won a tough split decision victory to Lauren Murphy. She has not had the same amount of high-level experience as Miesha. This is a very tough fight. I think McMahon's wrestling will be a problem for Tate, who traditionally likes using her wrestling. I could see this being a back-and-forth battle, maybe going to a split, but certainly a decision. I think McMahon will edge out Tate, but I will not be putting her on my counter-move team. Next, we have Tyron Woodley taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Woodley has 14 wins at a 71% finish rate, has fought high-level guys for a while now in Strikeforce and the UFC, has only lost to very good guys in the division. He lost a split to Jake Shields and a decision loss to Rory Mack. His last win, he decimated Dong Young Kim. He decimated Josh Koscheck. His win over Condit was due to an injury, so it's tough to say how that one would have gone. Gastelum is a tough winner. He's unbeaten in 10 fights. He's got a 70% finish rate. He has not had the high-level experience that Woodley has had. His biggest win so far, he choked out Jake Ellenberger in the first round. That was his last fight. Experience says Woodley wins this one, and possibly in devastating fashion, but there is something about Kelvin Gastelum. This dude is just fucking killing it right now. I think he beats Woodley, but I'm not sure if he gets a stop. This could be a risky pick for your counter move game, but I would definitely go with Gastelum. Next, we have Thiago Alves and Jordan Meehan. Alves is back after a massive layoff of 2 years. He did win his first fight back, though, via decision. He has 20 wins with 11 KOs, TKOs, and a 65% finish rate. He has fought everybody there is to fight. Lots of high-level experience. Meehan is younger, but with 9 more fights and wins than Alves. He has a 79% finish rate. He KO'd Mike Pyle in the first and his last fight. His only 2 losses in either Strikeforce or the UFC are against Tyron Woodley and Matt Brown. 50% of his UFC fights have been first-round wins. Pitbull being older and having been fighting since 2001, plus that huge layoff, I think those are factors here. Meehan can finish, and I think he will finish, but Alves has never been stopped early, and I don't see that happening here either. Meehan is a solid pick, but he might be settling for a third round finish. Next, we have a fucking kick-ass fight. Joe Lozon is taking on Al Iaquinta. Everybody knows Joe. He's one of the best ever. He's got 24 wins with 18 via submission. He's got a 96% finish rate. He's been fighting at a very high level for a very long time. He's seen everything. He's fought everybody. He won his last 2 fights. He subbed lots of really good dudes. Al is an up-and-comer out of Long Sarah. He won his last 2 fights, both via TKO. He's got 10 wins with KO stops and a 60% finish rate. He has lost 3 times via submission. Let me just tell you right now before I say anything, I fucking hate picking on this fight with a passion, because I love the shit out of both of these guys, inside the cage, outside the cage. Both great dudes. I fucking wish everybody could win. Honestly, I could see this going a few different ways. I could see it being a bloody stand-up war that goes to a decision, and I think it would be a toss-up. I could also see either guy getting a quick stop, either Joe with a sub or Al with his fists. But goddammit, I'm getting paid to be an analyst. I'm getting paid to make a decision here. I've got to make a pick. So with the 3 sub losses, and with Joe's propensity for submission wins and all that experience, I think the best pick to make here is Joe Lozon via submission, possibly early, before everybody gets too sweaty. All right, and finally, we have the biggest fight fucking ever. Anderson Silva is taking on Nick Diaz. How the fuck did this even happen? Anderson Silva, what is there to say? He's the best fucking fighter of all time. He is coming off of a devastating injury. He's been out for a year, and there's a lot of question marks. This could be a whole new world for him. He's gonna be 40 in a month, so age is definitely not on his side, but in 33 wins, 20 of them have come via KO. He has a 79% finish rate. He destroys people on their feet. He is incredibly fast. He is incredibly crafty. One of the best counter strikers ever, probably the best counter striker ever. And he's got a ground game that is just as deadly. He's very good off his back. Prior to Chris Weidman's back-to-back victories, Anderson looked all but unstoppable, minus his fight with Chael, a wrestler, something Silva will not have to worry about on Saturday night. Nick Diaz is also one of the best the sport has ever had. He has been around for a very long time. He has fought everybody. Very, very high-level jiu-jitsu. He picks people apart with his boxing, death by 1,000 cuts. In 26 wins, he has 13 KO finishes and 8 submissions with an 81% finish rate. Nick is also coming off of a pretty long layoff, but due to a retirement, not due to injury. However, he is only 31 years old. He's got a relentless pace. He is always engaging, which could play into Silva's hands, depending on how well he is when he comes back. Look, this is one of the most exciting fights that's ever going to take place in the cage. You have 2 of the best strikers, ground fighters in the history of the sport. Nick has youth on his side here. Anderson has begun to slow down. It's unclear yet how much that injury has taken out of him. So honestly, he's a big question mark. There's a chance that Nick could catch him with a shot and put him away. I don't think this fight goes to the ground. I think they both stand the whole time. Anderson will have a considerable size advantage, and that could end up making the difference here. But overall, Anderson is the biggest question mark with the injury. If he comes back and he fights like he did before Weidman, I think he could win, but you would be hard-pressed to put Nick Diaz away in any amount of time. I do believe this fight gets a finish. They both have high finish rates, so if you're talking about the most likely chance of a finish between Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva, I gotta go with the upset here. Even though I think Anderson Silva has a better chance of winning the fight, we're talking about fantasy MMA here. We're talking about points, and you gotta risk it to get the biscuit. The most likely fighter to win quick is gonna be Nick Diaz. I'm gonna go with Stockton's first son, and at 4,800, the price is right. Nick Diaz via early TKO. All right, now that we've gone through the matchups, it's time to make your squad. You can pick whoever the fuck you want, but I'm gonna go with Santos, Brandao, the upset in Moreta, Kong Watson, and the big upset, Nick Stockton 209 What Diaz. Once you've chosen your team, you'll hit the play now button, go ahead and invite some friends to play along with you, and then come Saturday night, you'll be able to check out how you're doing against the rest of the people in your tourney. Fight fans, I don't need to sell the best fight of all time, and I don't need to sell how much fucking fun fantasy MMA at Kountermove.com is either. If you're on the fence and you don't want to play in a money tourney, try a free roll. Try a free roll and tell me it's not the most fucking fun you've ever had in your whole life. I know it is, because I play these tourneys every fucking card, and it is always a blast. It is a way to feel like you're part of the action, just like when you freak the fuck out when some random running back on the Cleveland Browns scores you some fantasy points. So sign up today and make sure you hop in my big money tourney, because that one is gonna be the shit. Imagine what you could do with $4,000. You might even be able to buy the respect of your peers. For everybody at Kountermove.com, I'm Tommy Toehold. I will see you on the leaderboards. I'll be the one popping models and banging bottles. No, wait a second.